This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. A choice we're going to mandate. Get it on. And welcome to the best 15 minutes or so in the universe. That's Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. It's Mark Garrigus in New York City.
You got it. Hey, you're looking very dapper today.
I'm wearing something that didn't come out of the bottom of a hamper. Mark, what's on your mind? I know there's
a lot of things on my mind, but I'm not going to ask you. I'll ask you off air. What I can ask on air, Gary, do you have this clip of Alan Dershowitz talking about Maxwell?
Not handy, but I can get it up in a minute or two here.
Okay, so let me set the stage. Miss Maxwell was convicted of, I believe, 5 out of 6 counts, right, Gary? And
yes,
the case originally was getting quite a bit of attention. Then it kind of fell into the abyss. The jurors convicted her. And then BBC, which I always, Adam and I have talked about on a couple of occasions, we sometimes go there or to other news outlets because you can't get real news in America anymore. And all hell broke loose because they had Alan Dershowitz on, our friend of the show, to comment on the conviction. Right, Gary?
That is exactly right. I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay. And the controversy is, if you go onto Twitter, that apparently the idiot squad was making the argument that they brought him on as a neutral legal commentator, and he did not disclose the myriad of involvement or myriads of types of involvement that he had. Is that fair also?
Meaning that he'd flown on the Lolita Express.
Well, he represented Epstein during the sweetheart deal he got in 2008. So he knows Epstein very well. He's also embroiled in litigation with the chief accuser, who's represented by David Boyce, who to say that Alan has no use for David Boyce is one of the great understatements in legal jurisprudence. But if you could play it, Gary, and then we'll set it up, because I want to hear what Adam has to say, because I really think this is the classic definition of a tempest in a teapot.
All right, let's play it.
Well, I think the most important thing, particularly for British workers, is that the government was very careful who it used as witnesses. It did not use as a witness the woman who accused Prince Andrew, accused me, accused many other people, because the government didn't believe she was telling the truth. In fact, she, Virginia Giuffre, was mentioned in the trial as somebody who brought young people to Epstein for him to abuse. And so this case does nothing at all to strengthen in any way the case against Prince Andrew. Indeed, it weakens the case against Prince Andrew considerably because the government was very selective in who it used. It used only witnesses who they believed were credible, and they deliberately didn't use the main witness, the woman who started the whole investigation, Virginia Giuffre, because ultimately, they didn't believe she was telling the truth. They didn't believe that a jury would believe her, and they were right in doing so. So it was very smart on the part of the government.
So, I mean, yeah.
Can anybody dispute that he front-loaded the fact that she had accused him?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, he's been on a bit of a tear with this. I mean, he did not get on the defense. He got on the offense. By the way, Dershowitz, God bless him, the man has been making the rounds more at age 82 than he did at 62. You know, I mean,
or 42. Thank you. I just watched the other night the reprisal of him as the part of the dream team in the O.J. Simpson case. I think he looks better now than he did then.
So he has always been on the warpath against this accuser of him, who I didn't know was also an accuser of Prince Andrew as well. And he's using this moment, this opportunity, this platform to clear him or attempt to clear him, as well as countrymen, English countrymen, Prince Andrew, as well as used the Ghislaine Maxwell case to shed some light on his case. I mean, that's what it looked like to me. Is he being?
Oh yeah, and by the way, the reporting on this is so abhorrent. I don't even know where to begin. First of all, he didn't come on as an independent legal commentator doing some, commentary on the verdict. He said at the very beginning, that's why I had Gary play it, she accused me. I mean, that was in the first 15 seconds. If you blinked, maybe you missed it, but he said that. He also made a point. By the way, can't he comment? Can't he comment when every complete idiot is saying that this conviction has apparently increased the jeopardy of Prince Andrew? It's had the opposite effect. It hasn't increased his jeopardy at all, but that's the conventional wisdom.
The BBC released a statement after this happened. If you'd like to hear it, I can read it for you, Adam.
Sure.
Let's see here. Quote, the interview with Alan Dershowitz after the Ghislaine Maxwell verdict did not meet the BBC's editorial standards, as Mr. Dershowitz was not a suitable person to interview as an impartial analyst, and we did not make the relevant background clear to our audience. We will look into how this happened.
Well, first off, I think in a way it's more relevant when you are associated with the nuts and the bolts of people that are in the case and people that are deceased that were part of the investigation as well initially. So I would much rather hear what Dershowitz says about this as someone who's been on the inside versus some legal commentator who has no real affiliation or association with the case.
Right. You took the words right out of my brain. Would you rather hear Dershowitz, Jeff Toobin, or Danny Savalos? Who would you rather hear commenting after this? Who knows more about this case?
Well, Toobin has got his pants down and stroking his meat. He doesn't have time for this kind of fiddle faddle. So, yeah, Dershowitz he got himself on the wrong side of history or something in like the last 20 minutes. It was literally a champion to the left and the cause for his entire adult life. And then in the last, 20 minutes of his life has turned into something very different. But I've had conversations with him, and I don't want to betray our private conversations, but I don't think he would be mad at me if I said that he has talked about how friends of his for over 50 years, people he's known for 50 years, who he has either represented or represented loved ones, have turned on him in the last 4 years, have literally just become, kind of a Brutus-like in the way they've turned on him. What does that tell you about where we are? What's your explanation for that? Well, as the great Mike August says, you can never make enough deposits in the woke bank, meaning look no further than colleague, contemporary Patton Oswalt. That guy is no bigger champion for the cause of the left and the progressive movement and LGBT rights and everything under the sun. And then 10 minutes ago, he takes a picture with Dave Chappelle, and now he needs to apologize to the people he has supported his entire career. So you can't accumulate any goodwill. You know what I mean? It's almost like you can't do it as a citizen. It's not like, well, I paid every tax and I've obeyed every law, so you should let me out of this speeding ticket because I haven't been pulled over in 31 years. No, that's all in the past. You owe us $289 for today. Like, that is kind of the way they structure it. And my feeling is if someone has been a great champion, and we used to kind of do this. We do it with Martin Luther King. We do it with JFK. We'd go, all right, they had a couple of affairs, and yeah, maybe there's a few things they're not too proud of in their private life, but look what they did. Look at the positive contribution they made. And we used to be able to separate that out. No longer. It's doesn't matter how long Dershowitz worked with the Innocence Project or how many black men who were wrongfully accused of murder he and his team got out of jail or any of that. You're on the wrong side of the aisle now, and you need to be punished for that. So you just can't accumulate any goodwill.
Part of the most insidious part of this, and not at the level at which you're referring to, but at a level that I come to, the idea that the left has adopted of kind of eat your own, kill your own, destroy your own. All I got to say is we're roughly less than 11 months out from 2022. Just save the tape. You'll see what's going to happen. And this is not a winning strategy.
I concur. So, what is your take on the Maxwell case? How did you find it?
It's interesting, and we've got now the Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, where she was acquitted on, and there was a hung jury on a number of the counts, but she was still convicted on 4 of them. She had taken the stand. By all accounts, she did very well. Ghislaine Maxwell did not take the stand. She was convicted of all save 1 count. It's the federal criminal prosecution so favors the government that here you've got bicoastal examples of women who are charged, and women generally do better in criminal cases. Generally, I know that my gender police will come for me, and you have an example of one who testified, one who did not. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they're both going to do significant time. And there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with the system when you see people struggling to come to a verdict. When you see on the East Coast, they're telling the jurors, you've got to deliberate on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. On the West Coast, they're saying we've got a hung jury or we can't come to a verdict, and no, go back and deliberate more. That's not the way the system should be. And if you looked at it through the prism of, this was going on in the Ukraine, or it was going on in mainland China, we'd have all kinds of people screaming about what a monstrosity, judicial monstrosity this was. Because it's here, you get away with it.
How does it work when, let's say you're defending a client, the jury comes back and they go, we can't reach a verdict? How many times does the judge get to tell them to go back and find one before you protest?
Well, I always protest. You'll remember about 4 or 5 years ago, I was trying that case in Tennessee, and the jury, I believed, had acquitted the clients on 17 of the counts of the 21. There were 4 counts remaining. They sent out a note that they were hung on the remaining 4. The judge gave them what's called the Allen instruction, the dynamite instruction over our objections. I just think I don't think that is proper. I understand that originally it may have had good intent. We don't want to waste the time to go through another trial. But guess what? Trials they're unicorns. They don't exist anymore, especially in the federal court. Trials are few and far between, and acquittals are slim and none. And so why if a jury is hung, are you telling them go back and do some more?
I would find that very frustrating if I was defending somebody and you're trying to get a hung jury and somebody said, unhang yourself and come back when you've reached a verdict.
Yeah, go back, do this. You haven't thought about it enough. We're going to make you deliberate on New Year's or New Year's Eve or whatever. Those are coercive things. Just let a jury do what it's supposed to do. Don't get in the way of it.
What about this Oregon Supreme Court thing? About, about pulling over motorists.
Yeah, this is really good. And Thursday, when you and I get together, we're going to do a deep dive. I really want to talk about this because the Fourth Amendment, basically, there's been a complete wasting away of it over the last 50 years when it comes to cars. If you're in a car, there really was no more Fourth Amendment. This was really an amazing kind of turn of events in Oregon. And then I saw another one, Gary, I don't know where it was, but it was another state Supreme Court talking about you couldn't just use the smell of marijuana to initiate a search. There has been a pendulum swing. We'll see if it, takes root across the country. But at a certain point, there needs to be some actual, you know what it reminds me of? I'll give you this. The COVID Constitution. Once again, we're sitting here in California, although I'm in New York, it's even worse. We've exceeded the 20% positivity rate. Now, what are we finding out, Adam? We're finding out, breaking news. If you're obese, it's a problem for you. By the way, people are getting checked into hospitals, even though the hospitalization rates are trending up. But guess what? What are they now disclosing? Well, the reason they're being checked in is not necessarily COVID. COVID is present also there. Have you been watching this?
Yes.
So why almost, 30 some odd months into this, all of a sudden?
No, 20, we're 20 some odd, 21 months or whatever.
Right. It seems like
it feels like
longer.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll just tell you, it's astonishing once again to me that people have just decided they're going to take whatever critical thinking they've got, push it to the side, and just move on to the next issue.
Well, how does that pertain to the Oregon?
Well, the Oregon case is interesting because a Supreme Court decided we're going to say that a car has, Fourth Amendment rights. Basically, people who are in a car have Fourth Amendment rights,
like your home.
Like your home. That's right. That was always the case. It only became during this war on drugs that we switched to this other thing where everybody basically forfeited any right to their privacy and against search and seizure in a car. Finally, that's swinging back. But why does it take the car or a smell of marijuana? Why is it that for whatever number of months you two want to correct me on, that we have abandoned the Constitution when it comes to COVID mandates, COVID prescriptions, COVID lockdowns, and everything else? It's, and my explanation for it is because people were no longer putting up with the bullshit about marijuana. So they finally figured that out. And now why is COVID mandates and everything else going by the wayside? Because people understand, especially Dems on my side of the aisle, this is a losing strategy.
By the way,
it doesn't make sense.
Well, especially when there is no evidence whatsoever that we can stem the tide of anything by locking people down or shutting down restaurants.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite.
I know.
It's the exact opposite. We have compounded the problem.
I'm with you, my brother.
By the way, just to clean it up, Pennsylvania was the state you were looking for with the marijuana smell coming out of the Supreme Court.
Right. And, my father used to say, if I had a nickel for every time every guy who was in state prison for having expired registration, I would say, Pops, if I had a dime for every guy who was in state prison because his car smelled or had the odor of marijuana, I would never work again. It's the same thing. Complete bullshit.
All right. Well, on that uplifting note, we will reconvene for the full-length version of this show coming up very soon. I'll let Mark get back to his duties in New York City, and I will tend to my own here in Los Angeles. So, until next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Garriga saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.